Native American relationships, marriage customs, and attitudes towards sexuality from a historical and cultural perspective. Many indigenous societies had diverse and often progressive views on love, sex, and gender roles, differing from the rigid structures imposed by European colonizers. Marriage and sexual practices in Native American culture. North America, indigenous tribes had varying customs regarding relationships, marriage, and sexuality. Some societies were monogamous, while others practiced polygamy or polyamory. Many tribes, such as the Lakota and Cheyenne, allowed men to take multiple wives if they could support them. Meanwhile, in matrilineal tribes like the Iroquois and Hopi, women held power in choosing and dismissing their partners, sometimes openly taking lovers without social stigma. Premarital sex was often accepted, and in many cases, young women had the freedom to explore their desires before committing to marriage. The Lakota, Apache, and Comanche women, for example, sometimes engaged in trial marriages, where couples lived together before deciding on a long-term union. Divorce was also relatively easy in many tribes. If a woman was dissatisfied, she could simply pack her belongings and leave, often returning to her birth family without shame. Seduction, romance, and passion. In some tribes, courtship rituals were elaborate. The Cheyenne, for instance, had a tradition where men would serenade women outside their lodges with a flute, hoping to win their affection. In some Plains tribes, a suitor would present a woman with a beautifully decorated buffalo robe or horse as a token of his love. If she accepted, they would engage in secret rendezvous before making their union official. Among the Inuit, sexual relationships could be open and exploratory. Partner swapping and temporary marriages were sometimes practiced, often as a means of strengthening alliances between families. Diverse marital customs. Throughout North America, the diversity of marriage customs was astonishing. Many tribes, especially those in the Plains, Great Lakes, and southwestern regions, practiced polygamy or polyamory, allowing men to have multiple wives if they were able to provide for them. This system often ensured the survival of the community, as it fostered strong family ties and broader social networks. However, what is often overlooked is how women played an equally pivotal role in these arrangements, not just as wives, but as partners with agency. For example, among the Navajo, marriage was not only a union of two individuals, but a connection between two extended families. When a woman married, she kept her last name, symbolizing the importance of her lineage. Marriages were often arranged, but could be dissolved if either party was unhappy. Divorce was relatively easy for women, and they could often return to their mother's home without any social stigma. In contrast, the Hopi, known for their matrilineal structure, allowed women to choose their partners, and once married, the husband would move into the wife's family home. The wife, often the primary economic provider, could dismiss her husband if he was considered lazy or unfit, showcasing her economic and social power. Courtship and sexual freedom. Before formal marriages, courtship rituals were vital for showing affection and love, but they also served as a window into a woman's sexual agency and autonomy. In many tribes, young women were not bound by rigid sexual codes that sought to control their bodies. Courtship could begin with shared tasks, such as the hidatsa tradition, where a young man would offer his skills in pottery or weaving as a demonstration of his capability to support a future wife. The man would often approach the woman's family, but the woman herself had significant power in choosing whether to continue the courtship. Once the relationship began, intimacy and love could be shared freely. In the Plains tribes, courtship often involved flirtation games and storytelling, where a young man would serenade his potential bride by playing the flute under the window of her lodge. This music was believed to embody a romantic and spiritual power, connecting the couple to the land, the animals, and the ancestors. If the woman was interested, she might respond by dropping a piece of clothing or a trinket out of the window, signaling her affection. Some tribes allowed premarital sex, especially in the context of trial marriages. A woman and man might live together for a time to see if they were compatible before formally committing. The Apache practiced this kind of testing period, giving both parties the freedom to explore intimacy and sexual connection without the pressure of lifelong commitment. Two-spirit people and gender fluidity. A significant aspect of Native American sexuality was the recognition of two-spirit people, individuals who embraced both masculine and feminine traits or fulfilled roles typically associated with both genders. These individuals were often revered, viewed as possessing a unique spiritual wisdom that transcended the binary gender system imposed by European colonizers. Among the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Navajo, two-spirit people could marry either a partner of the same or opposite gender, depending on their identity and desires. They were often seen as highly respected healers, shamans, or mediators, and their relationships were often celebrated within their communities. Two-spirit people were not confined to rigid sexual roles or marriages, and often had the freedom to explore multiple partners or more complex sexual arrangements. The Navajo, for instance, had a special place for those with both male and female characteristics, called Endelihi. These individuals were believed to possess a unique ability to bridge gender divides, bringing balance to relationships and communities. Sexuality as sacred and spiritual for many indigenous peoples, sex was not just a physical act, but a spiritual one. The Iroquois, for example, had a deep connection between sexual energy and their spiritual beliefs. The act of making love was thought to be a way of honoring the earth and the cosmos. Sacred sexuality played a central role in several Native American cultures, where sex was seen as an act of creation, not just reproduction but spiritual renewal. The Cherokee people also viewed sexual energy as sacred, with a strong emphasis on mutual respect and care between partners. The idea of Tusqua intercourse was seen as a form of energy exchange between partners, one that required balance and respect for both the spirit and the body. The act itself could be used to renew the relationship, creating harmony and balance within the couple and, by extension, within the community. Pregnancy, childbirth, and motherhood. In many Native American societies, pregnancy and childbirth were deeply sacred events, celebrated with special rites and rituals designed to ensure the health of both mother and child. Midwives played a vital role in many communities, offering guidance during pregnancy, childbirth, and postpartum care. These women were often powerful spiritual figures in their communities and had a deep understanding of herbal medicine and spiritual practices to help ease the process. The Navajo, for example, celebrated the Blessing Way ceremony, a sacred ritual designed to protect and bless a woman during pregnancy and childbirth. The ceremony called upon the spirit world for support, invoking the presence of ancestors to ensure a safe and positive birth experience. Motherhood was viewed as a central part of life, and women's roles as mothers were honored across various tribes. However, women were not expected to carry the full burden of child-rearing alone. The Hopi had communal child-rearing practices, where the entire community, including extended families, played active roles in nurturing and educating the children. Women who were single mothers often had the freedom to raise their children with the support of the entire tribe, without judgment. Inuit and Plains tribes also celebrated the arrival of children, and the traditions surrounding childbirth often included songs and dances to welcome new life into the world. These celebrations fostered an atmosphere of respect for the mother's role and recognized the strength and endurance of women in these societies. Intercourse, intimacy, and power dynamics. Among many indigenous groups, intimacy was about more than just sexual pleasure. It was about connection, trust, and respect. The Iroquois believed that sexual intimacy created a deep bond between husband and wife, and their relationships were often built on mutual respect and shared responsibilities. Sexuality was seen as a natural expression of the connection between two people, and there were no taboos surrounding open discussions of sexual desires or needs. In the Sioux and Cheyenne, love and sexual intimacy were celebrated in poetry, songs, and dances, where the sensual and the spiritual were intricately woven together. Women often held the power in these relationships, especially when it came to the nature of the sexual bond. If a woman was unsatisfied with her partner, she had the autonomy to leave him, and many times, this act was a form of personal empowerment. These women were not viewed negatively for ending marriages or relationships, as their freedom and independence were respected. Some tribes, such as the Comanche, practice wife sharing as a way of cementing alliances between families or groups. While this practice might seem foreign to modern sensibilities, it was often considered a symbol of trust, not only between the individuals involved, but also between larger tribal or family networks. Freedom, agency, and the endurance of Native women. The sexual lives of Native American women throughout history were characterized by a vast range of practices, many of which were rooted in autonomy, respect, and spiritual connection. Despite the pressures imposed by European colonization and the loss of many cultural practices, the resilience and agency of Native women have endured through generations. Their lives, their stories, and their relationships have often been overshadowed or misrepresented, but through research, we begin to understand the rich complexity and beauty of these cultures and the central roles that women played within them. I hope you found the details of this story as fascinating and unsettling as I did. You, mysterious, curious, intellectual, disturbed, beautiful people. My name is Penny Flick, with Kreep-ish. I look forward to sharing more of these stories that captivate and intrigue our minds, which can challenge our way of thinking. Comment on your thoughts below as I continue to uncover the mysteries of our history, true crime, paranormal, conspiracy, and cringe-worthy, creepy content. Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember that the truth is often stranger than fiction.